speaking of things that are things but also aren't things, let's explore our mind. So why don't we do a practice? And this is a practice inspired by the traditions of inner alchemy. So we'll do a longer sit. We have just a tiny bit more material at the end of the day, so it won't be a long sit, but it'll be a longer than these last little glimpses that we've been doing. So in this practice of inner alchemy, the emotions of the body are considered to be living energies. Our emotions are considered to be living energies, and they are energies that arise in us to meet our needs. They arise in us to meet our needs. So you could think about, like, when one experiences anger, please talk. This is actually the beginning of the meditation, so please participate with me. When you experience anger, if you can imagine this, titrate it a little bit, what does that feel like physically? What does that feel like physically? Okay, I remember when I'm angry. What do you feel in your body? What do you feel in your hands, your toes, your lips, your nose? Okay, I like it. What else have you got? When you experience anger, what does that feel like? Tension. Yeah, a little becoming a bowstring or something. That was mine. What else do you feel? When you get angry, what does that feel like? What does that feel like? Heat. Yes, anger can be a hot emotion, and that's kind of part of the fight or flight response that anger is a part of. Anger is usually the fight part, and so the heat is actually your blood flow ramping up to get you in a UFC battle, verbally or physically. The brain doesn't really tell the difference. So these are some good ones for anger. Yes, red face. Your face might become red. The chi comes up, it comes to the surface, it comes to the hands. Okay, what about when you feel sad? What about when you feel sad? What kind of things do you experience when you feel sad? Yeah, low energy. You can feel a slump. I was just reading a book where they were contemplating the etymology of the word depression, which really means to be pressed down. And it might refer somewhat to how that comes about, is that we do that to our emotions, but it also feels like you've been smushed, can't get out of bed, you're squashed down. It's low energy. What else do people feel when they are sad? Like physically, on the sensation level, what does sadness bring on the sensation level? Tearful. Yeah. What about your breath? When you feel sad, do you tend to breathe like this? Or like this? Or like this? Sometimes the breath can be shallow. Sadness feels watery. Yeah, and this poetic language is just fine, right? This is how we can describe emotions. Heavy. Yeah. I often note that in sadness, my breath will tend toward the exhale. Right, a sigh is kind of a classic associated with sadness. In some Qigong and somatic types, they would say the fact that we're sobbing is the fact that we need to release. That sadness is the way we let go of things. Perhaps that's a theory you could entertain if you wanted. Okay, one more. When you're happy and you know it, what happens? When you're happy and you know it, what happens? When you're happy and you know it, then you're what? We'll surely show it. Yeah, you might clap your hands. You might actually feel a boisterous energy abounding in you. Okay, light, uplifted, lighter. I'm walking on sunshine. Oh. Okay, bright and open. Okay, and we actually just demonstrated a bit of the cultural trance in that when I said happy, the answers rolled in like that. Nobody had to wait for, like, I don't know, the discomfort or shame filters, or maybe you were just warmed up by this is the third one. Also, you know the game now. But maybe it's because I sang to you. This isn't a scientific test, but I believe that from other experience and from actual research, that we're more comfortable describing what happiness is like than we are describing what anger is like. Yeah. So this is a bit of a game to get us warmed up for our inner alchemy practice, which is that instead of thinking that there are positive emotions and negative emotions, have you heard this on the spiritual path? Okay, it's bull. There are no positive emotions and negative emotions. There are just emotions. There are just emotions. There are more or less skillful strategies to meet one's needs. So we should put that in, because we were like, wait a minute, being unhinged and angry, that's definitely negative. No, not as long as you don't go yell at anybody. It just is what it is. It's energy, man. As long as you don't go drink, you could be unhinged and angry and beat the pillow in your bioenergetics session and resolve 15 years of trauma. Is the anger then good or bad? Right? For me, that's great, man. And it was a skillful strategy for meeting my needs, that the anger was I need to make a boundary. Right? So if you call anger a negative emotion, you fragment yourself and you don't get the benefit of that emotion. If you call sadness a negative emotion, you may never learn how to properly surrender, to grieve and let go, so that you can experience freshness or even the depth. The sadness is like an autumnal emotion. Everything's falling down and sinking down. Meditation happens in the winter, in the depths of quiet. If you don't know how to go sad, you might never really meditate very deeply. You might just always be on the surface, convincing yourself things are other than they are. So if we split ourselves up into the good parts and the bad parts, the positive emotions and the negative emotions, we're missing out on the bliss of open-heartedness amidst the diversity of arising appearances. Okay, so we're going to do a little meditation with this. Yeah, the emotion isn't the problem, it's the behavior. So in nonviolent communication, sometimes we say you have living emotions and living needs, and then you have non-living stories and strategies, right? These parts aren't alive, but they help us feel in control or feel right. So we tend to focus on these and not really focus on the living emotions and the living needs. Okay, what we just did verbally is the first step in emotional alchemy, in Taoist inner alchemy, in yogic, bringing the 5 pranas to the central channel. It's taking away the label and relating to the energy itself, taking away the label and relating to the energy itself. So there's definitely something cool in being able to go to therapy and finally admit, I think I'm angry. When you had walled that off for years. Oh my God, I've been sad all this time. That label, very healthy. In terms of energetic alchemy, the label is what the alchemists say is you're trying to get these nourishing energies, the living forces of our emotions. They're like seasons and spices and stuff. It's like anger is like hot sauce, taco sauce, and sadness is like sauerkraut, and inner peace is like neutral oatmeal, and then one is like umami, and you want this whole smorgasbord available, and you want to be able to get nourished by it. So if you just stay at the level of labels, it would be like trying to eat the menu. Oh, that's a nice picture of sushi. It doesn't taste great, but it sure looks like sushi. No, you want the sushi itself. So once you've gotten safe enough in therapy to admit the word, I feel sad, or if you came from some families or some strange abusive relationships, to admit that you're happy, right? Because some of us got punished for being happy at certain times in our life. So to actually say, I feel happy. Is everything still okay? Okay. I feel happy. Once you get there, the next level is to actually, okay, now what does that feel like? Whoa, I feel like my chest has an Alka-Seltzer in it. It's all effervescent. Oh, that's interesting. All right. Well, now I'm feeling sad for all the times that I wasn't happy. Well, what does that feel like? Oh, now everything is sinking, but the Alka-Seltzer is still there. How can those two happen at the same time? Tolerance for ambiguity, man. That's my quick answer for anything you ask today. So we're going to do a little practice with these energies or with these seasons. So we've got a number of metaphors, right? It's food, it's flavors, it's seasons, it's macronutrients, right? Let's see, anger is the protein and happiness is the carbs. Okay, whatever. And the mantra you'll come away with that I'd like you to know is it's not a problem, it's a season. It's not a problem, it's a season, right? A feeling comes up. Some of them you like, some of them you dislike. They're just seasons, man. It's happiness. Don't worry, it'll pass. Oh, it's sadness. Don't worry, that's going to pass too. It's neutral. I mean, be comfortable with it while it lasts because you're going to be angry next, right? And learning that they're passing things, but then learning that we have a unique opportunity to actually gain the spiritual nutrient from these emotions while they're up. This is what we're going to play. So, formal meditation time. Let's find our posture. Whatever posture works for you, cross-legged or on a chair or in the recliner, whatever you like. Take a moment to regulate your breath. This just kind of clears the decks, wipes the slate. We're going to practice a little basic mindfulness. So notice your body, not trying to change anything. See how it is, just the way it is. Of course, if you need to change something, if you sat down in the way that's uncomfortable, feel free to shift that. And then when you can, just go, okay, that's how it is. And noting your breath. And finally, noticing the mind, whether it's joyful or bored or gloomy or optimistic. Just, hey, is that how you are? Interesting. Cultivating that curiosity. And perhaps hold all three of those, lightly hosting body, breath, and mind with this curious and non-judgmental awareness. And let's invoke or evoke that sense of wise friend. Perhaps again, recalling an encounter you had with a real life person, or even your favorite dog or gerbil or frog or something, where they gave you that sense of unconditional positive regard. And also that sense maybe of wisdom or insight, maybe a mentor or even a fictional character or an archetype. Cultivating that feeling. What's it like to be in the presence of that wise friend type energy? And you could imagine it with an image, like in the Tibetan traditions, they'll imagine these as like visualized deities that represent that archetype. Or you could just feel like an energy. Often we sense it like the sun shining these blessing rays toward you. Feeling them permeate your body. Have that sense of self-compassion. The wish for your happiness, the wish to be free of suffering. The wish that your open-heartedness might continue to grow. That your capacity for peace might continue to be stabilized. And then smile down into your lower abdomen and feel that this luminosity, this blessing wave that comes in begins to consolidate, like the way stars and planets in the universe consolidate. They gravitate unto themselves, and that luminosity forms to like a little pearl of light. And when it does so, it wakes up your own wise friend qualities. This intrinsic capacity for compassion, bliss, ease, and comfort. Like we mentioned before, that innate altruism, how good it feels to make a contribution. And feel that as well radiate into your body like a blessing from this aspect of yourself to all the aspects of yourself. May I be happy, free from suffering, growing in open-heartedness, stabilizing in equanimity and peace. And then it's even as if your body and like an aura around your body begin to glow. And this blessing wave now shines out from you and blesses those closest to you geographically or emotionally. And then maybe even shines out to their friends and into all the neutral people who you don't know one way or the other. And even into the obstacle makers and the mean-spirited ones who really would cause a lot less trouble if they had peace and open-heartedness. So may it be so for them as swiftly as possible. Then gently bring the foreground of awareness back to that pearl itself, down in the lower belly. And as it spins and turns, just according to its own whim, we're going to use this, as in some traditions, they talk about it like an alchemical cauldron. This is this crucible in which we can create spiritual elixirs. So feeling that sense that this pearl, the wise friend, both within and without, it represents that sense of safety and explorer mindset, and just this innate luminosity and compassion. Like if you were being a wise friend for someone and you were really able to just love them through whatever was coming up. And then lightly, with that titrating mindset, going to invoke a memory or a sensation of like, what does sadness feel like? Experience it with your body, not so deeply that you'll be flooded by it. And feel free, if any of these are uncomfortable to bring up, you could stop the meditation right then, no problem. You could shift your focus, no problem. But as is comfortable for you, you can bring up a memory of sadness, or sort of more intermediate, but also the kind of more real version of this meditation is you ask, is there sadness present in my being? And just try to feel, what are the qualities of that sadness? What does it feel like somatically? Is it the heaviness or the tearful eyes? The breath change? And don't worry, If you got too blissed out earlier that it's hard to get there, you can just imagine. But I'd like to invite you to imagine that these sensations, this thing that we're calling sadness, is like a season. It's like an energy. I call it the autumn season. The energy of surrender. And feel that this jewel of unconditional regard from the lower belly, it shines into wherever those sensations or thoughts of sadness are. And from their fragmentation, from their sort of being off all alone, this lonely sadness, it invites them back into the wholeness of who you are. And you can visualize, or you may feel, that those sensations are drawn back into that pearl like a subtle energy, or like a spiritual nutrient or fuel. Drawn into this deepest part of your being, the seat of your soul or yourself. Feel that this emotion and its sensations are welcomed back into the depths of who you are in a holistic and wholesome way. Let that process continue. And then lightly, gently, subtly evoke anger. Is there anger in this body mind? Or would you like to just remember or recall, what is it like to feel angry, or even imagine? And again, do so in a way that feels comfortable for you. Feel free to not do anything that doesn't feel comfortable for you. Try to move from the label to what are the sensations? What are the sensations? Were they that red face, or what happens to the heart or the hands or the feet? And then imagine that from that little jewel, the sense of wise friend, compassionate spiritual friend, it shines into the anger in you and helps to reintegrate it, to make space, to compassionately experience that emotion. Almost validating that it's a human thing to feel this way. Of course you would feel angry. Of course. Letting that season in the inner body, I think of it as the springtime, the upward arousing energy. Be a healthy expression of who you are. And then imagining or feeling that those energies, that seasonal energy of spring, flows back into that pearl in the lower belly, like a form of nourishment, spiritual nourishment, and it's integrated into this soul body, the seat of the self, however you'd like to think of it. It strengthens your capacity to be grounded and rooted in who you are. Let's call to mind now the experience of joy. And this could be excitement or enthusiasm. Even sometimes the uncomfortable side is mania. The more comfortable side is bliss, but they're all kind of in a joy continuum. Lightly dip your toes in there. Maybe don't jump in all at once, even if you might want to. Titrate. And what does joy feel like in the body, or what does excitement feel like in the body? I tend to think of this as the summertime of the emotions, with its radiantness. And then cultivating again the sense of that jewel, that pearl in the lower belly, representing the seat of the self, the unconditional compassionate, unconditionally grateful. And feel as if it shines that unconditional regard into the sensations of joy within you. And sort of welcomes them home, invites any fragmented experience of joy, any lonely experience of joy back into the wholeness of your entire being. Joy that can befriend your sadness and your anger. Joy that's a holistic expression of your whole self. Feeling or imagining that the energy of that summertime emotion flows back into the jewel and is concentrated, helping to consolidate that sense of I amness, mere presence, of compassionate beingness. Then lightly, gently, sweetly evoke a mild sense of fear. Maybe you could even say trepidation, caution. These could be mild senses of fear. Identify, are these in my body? Feel the sensations of them. And then from that jewel, imagine a light, a luminosity, a welcoming presence shine to the sensations of fear, trepidation, or caution. Yes, you are a part of who I am. You're an important expression of my being. And feel that those are welcomed, begin to become reintegrated. In myself, I tend to feel fear as the winter, and so in this, I actually feel almost like it thaws the coldness that came up when I inquired within, but whatever you feel for you. And then imagine that energy flowing back into the pearl in the lower belly, welcomed home like a spiritual nourishment. These different flavors of our experience, these different living energies, nourishing the deepest sense of who we are, our sense of presence and compassion. And then finally, we bring up, in this one, we'll do for the between seasons, let's bring up a sense of boredom. What's it like to feel bored? This is cousins to confusion or worry. So any of those that might feel like the one you want to work with, could bring up and then feel, what are those sensations? From the jewel, the pearl, lower belly, you shine out this sense of a welcoming presence, compassionate, peaceful regard. Hey, thanks for being part of me. Boredom or confusion. And with that alchemical touch, you feel the energy of that emotion begin to flow into the pearl and consolidate into that seat of your being, strengthening the I amness, your capacity to rest from your depths in compassion and luminosity. And then once more, just focusing on the pearl, spinning and spiraling, consolidating unto itself the sense of a deepest part of your being, which is already calm and at peace. It's at the center of your being. And it's also filled with the radiant qualities of benefit, luminosity, welcoming, and compassion. So let those once again fill the body. Perhaps they're even stronger now that we've brought in these various subtle energies, living forces to feed that alchemical medicine. Feel your body filled with strength, bliss, healing, these aspects of wholesomeness that you've cultivated. And even from the jewel that shines out into the world, this sense of welcome and wholeness that we so badly crave. May this wholeness that we've experienced to whatever degree shine out and catalyze like lighting a little candle from a lit candle and awaken that sense of homecoming in others. Then gently letting go of the practice. Come back to basic mindfulness. Perhaps even noticing, has my experience of body, breath, or mind changed during the course of that meditation? And just hosting non-judgmental awareness. Then rejoice. You did it. Another meditation session. Regulate the breath by way of transition. Maybe a couple sighs. And personally, as I sigh, I'm going to get a little movement in here. Come all the way back to the interpersonal from this deep intrapersonal experience. Oh, yeah. Oh. Good times. Okay, so inner alchemy, emotional alchemy. What do you think? What do you feel? What do you think about what you feel? Any thoughts, questions? Was that hard, easy, confusing, illuminating? Yeah, a whole inner virtual hug, bro. In a way, it's just another version of that inner smile, but it has a slightly different kind of valence to it. So, but the medicine is that compassionate regard. So, yeah. What else? Anybody who that was your favorite of the day? Might have been mine. Okay, me and Jim, excellent. We Taoists in the room. Anybody who that was your least favorite of the day? Okay, good. This is how you coax people to give feedback when they've been meditating all day. Okay, cool. Yeah, fun stuff. So any questions? Spend some time practicing with the recording. Yeah, that one's a little complex. It has a lot of elements. So we're non-labeling and we're accepting and we're titrating and we've got a wise friend and we're visualizing. There's a lot going on in there, but this is this is a version of a traditional practice where they use this kind of somato-emotional energy work to cultivate the stuff that I've been kind of intellectually chatting us around, accepting the emotions and blah, 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 blah. So the idea how this works, because we can foreground and background our attention through intention. What's neat, what nobody ever told me long ago when I was studying like emotional integration, so-called studying emotional catharsis, was that either pretending I'm not my sadness, like many spiritual traditions will tell you to say, I have anger, but I am not my anger, often a way of repressing that. And then you get the counter swing, like the school of breath work that I trained in, which is like you hyperventilate until you can't repress your emotions, and then they all come flooding out. And then the bummer I experienced with that, some people get better results than me. The bummer I experienced was they all came flooding out, and then I felt really, really good for about 90 minutes. And then it all just sort of like went back to normal. Like even some of the insights that I had in the trance states that the cyclic hyperventilation brought on, these were cool insights. And then they just went away because it wasn't a practice of integrating those emotions. So the principle behind that meditation, whether it was your favorite and you're going to do it forevermore, whether you think you like it, but you don't know what the hell happened, or whether you don't want to do that one ever again, the principle behind it is we are learning to foreground the sense of compassionate beingness and host the doingnesses of all of our diverse emotional selves, right? So sadness comes up, and instead of going like, oh, no sadness, or going, oh God, I am sad. And have you ever, like, I don't know, maybe y'all weren't as broken as me when I was a kid, but with whatever emotion, that sounded more serious than it was. Excuse me. I'll try to be more conscious with my speech. But like sadness for me has always been like one of my most difficult to accept, experience, and integrate. And so when that comes on, if I can't repress it or regulate it or do the balloon thing like Amanda taught us earlier, if I get like lost in that, it feels totally like lonely and hopeless and just like everything's a problem. Some folks will have that with their anger or with their mania, or some folks like anger issues is often the fact that when they get angry, they lose their sense of who they are. Like people can go into actual blackouts, but before that, people can just like, oh, they remember, they thought they were in control, but like who they are when they have lucidity later, like what in the hell was going on there? That's the fragmented state that this type of work is attempting to give us a practice to heal from. So when we allow anger to come up, and the anger is like, I need to make a boundary, I need to make a boundary. That's its whole job, right? Instead of becoming boundary maker, that's all I am radiant compassion, making a boundary. I am radiant compassion, grieving a loss. And then some people get lost in mania. I do a little bit. Less now that I've learned what that is. It's not that I was actually enlightened recently. It's that my brain is on an upswing. Okay, good to know. It comes with repressing the sadness, by the way. The other side. Okay. Anyway, enough self-revelation for one day. But some of us, we get manic and we lose compassionate, everyday, ordinary presence, and we become fragmented mania and we do stupid stuff while we're in an episode. That if we could learn to go, I am compassionate presence, ordinary mind, having a really fun time right now, we could do so. We could bring mania onto the path. Is that true? I don't know. That might be a weird poem. But like, this is often, except for in the cases where we need to go back and take our meds, right? Some things are a little too extreme chemically for us to integrate at this time. But in a lot of the other cases, what they found is like the depression that didn't respond to your meds, when someone learned how to integrate it holistically, that's when it started to break as a real pathology. Like when they took the mushrooms or the ketamine or the wilderness therapy or the meditation, and they were like, they found this sense of self that wasn't depressed and learned to relate, that's when they started the path of healing. So this is the notion with this, is that we're learning to foreground simple, basic, compassionate awareness, and then come out of denial about the wild, luminous, emotional energies that are dancing through our body mind, and welcome them all home. Instead of having them be lonely, oh, sadness is out here and happiness is over here. No, now they're going to come and be friends because they were the same person all along. And the thing works a lot better when you treat it as it actually is, instead of a fictive fragmentation. Okay, that was a lot of words. Inner alchemy. Any thoughts on that? Any questions? We got the principle. We got a practice for it. Feeling good? Okay. Y'all have grown a little less responsive in the last hour, but I'll work with it somehow. I need to open my heart to the diversity of experiences. So here we are. Okay, cool. So our last piece, let's do one more piece. You want to? Have you got 20 minutes left worth? Okay, and then the Indian food will come. and I will go. So let's do a quick piece on shadow work. Quick piece on shadow work. And this is one of the practices. One of my Tibetan lamas actually is a big student in that integral system of human development. And I'm so fortunate. She gave us these like in-depth Tibetan tantric, super secret, super complex transmissions. And she said, okay, now do all that or not. But what I don't want you to ever skip is shadow work. Always do your shadow work. And it's because there's so much kind of spiritual energy or developmental potential in that, that it's really the best place for most of us to work. In that integral theory philosophy, also when I told you about the integral life practice, like every day they do a little weightlifting and a little mindfulness and try to cover all their bases. They recommended like always toss in a little shadow work, right? Like always if you can, be growing out of unconsciousness a little bit more every day, or growing into self-integration a little more every day. And you will, I don't want to say bypass, but you'll get to skip the line on a lot of the problems that might come up by doing certain types of development work and skipping the shadow integration. So let's chat about it, do a quick practice, and then go wherever we go. So what is psychological shadow? Well, this was a term, I think Jung developed that term in particular. He brought some of it from Freud. I think in the Freud to Jung transition, the first iteration is that the unconscious itself is what was being referred to as shadow, right? The parts of ourselves that we're not aware of. But it came to be known and really kind of worked with in depth through the understanding of projection in the therapy office. So this is where you're feeling angry, but you were trained that anger isn't allowed. So you have to tell yourself, I'm not angry. But part of you knows someone in this room is angry. And so your mind assumes the therapist is pissed at you. Was that too complicated? Let me say it again, right? You feel mad. You can't be honest about yourself with that. And so you project that the person who's mad is that one over there. Okay, sadly, I hope this isn't too triggering of a topic, but sadly, the people who vote the most against the interests of the LGBTQ community, they've been shown to like watch the most gay porn because it's a projection, right? They cannot own a part of themselves. Like that part's bad, that part's dirty. And so they have to make somebody else wrong about it. So somebody around here really has deviant desires. It's like, well, it's not deviant to them. It's deviant to you, buddy. Like, get a clue. Man, if the world learns some shadow work, I can only imagine how cool this place might be. Wow. Okay, so the psychological shadow, for ease of description, we could say is the disowned self. The disowned self. This is really important in relationships. I sometimes coach people or teach on practices of spiritual relationship. And if you hang out in enough New Agey groups, you'll hear about the concept of twin flames. Have you ever heard of this? Twin flames? It used to be soulmates, right? But now it's twin flames, and people have created entire mythologies of the difference between a soulmate and the twin flame, and they'll sell you a workshop about it for a lot more than the workshop I'm going to sell you. So, so I'm obviously better than them. Someone around here is really concerned with money and will do anything to get it, but it couldn't be me. So it must be those other hippies. Oh, dang it, I just caught one. Crud. So in the twin flame phenomenon, who knows what they might be teaching you really cool stuff in those workshops. But the one thing to watch out for is something described by Harville Hendricks, psychologist, which they call the imago match. And what they found as relationship counselors for many, many years, and you can read it in the book, Getting the Love You Want, is that people tend to be the most intensely attracted to partners who have two qualities. They embody the disowned aspects of ourselves, and we can subconsciously smell that they're going to force us to do the unresolved work of our early childhood household. And anybody who's ever fallen in love and then made the mistake of like moving in after 6 months based on that feeling, a lot of them realize, they go like, oh, wow, I used to think you were so free-spirited. Now I realize you're just irresponsible as hell, just like my mother, and all of a sudden, like the best, coolest thing ever turns into the worst thing ever. Because often what's so attractive is that like inside, you're not allowed to be free-spirited. And so she comes along. Oh, I met her at the dance and she's just so in touch with her emotions, and then eventually that gets old. Like you're good at repressing that in yourself. Now I'm going to get to work on her. And the tension comes that like she hopefully won't let you repress her emotions. And the thing that was mirroring like, oh, wow, that'll really complete me, becomes the thing that's the most annoying to you. Because it's annoying to you on the inside, you make it annoying on the outside. So if we knew about shadow work, like this is part of where I found this so important, is in my own relationships, in relationships with others. On the spiritual path, this comes into your guru yoga, right? So when we talk about partners like this, you can see the shadow projected can be things we think of as good. Or when you talk about people making laws about other people's reproductive or sexual freedoms, shadow projection can be bad. In relationship with spiritual mentors, when you have that sense of homecoming and they can do no wrong, and it's like, that's actually a form of dehumanization. And usually what you're doing is you're actually projecting the parts of yourself that are innately compassionate and wise and free, but you're not allowed to realize that. That would be haughty of you. That would be too arrogant. And so you have to put that all on His Holiness the Dalai Lama, right? That he's got that, not me. And I will tell you a secret that you're not supposed to know, because that's sort of my brand. I inherited that from a couple of my teachers. I'm not sure if that's healthy. The punchline of all that guru yoga stuff is that the guru tries to wake you up to the fact that you're projecting that on them, and that all of those qualities have always been coming forth from within you. So shadow projection, super important, super important. For ease and brevity in our class today, this has to do with which human needs you're allowed to experience. Which human needs you're allowed to experience. So let's do these are contemplative meditations we're doing a lot of today. There has been a lot of me talking, but then sometimes when we're doing the back and forth, I do want to highlight, if I didn't before, that these are classically meditation techniques. They're considered spiritual contemplative techniques. So we are doing a bit of meditation today, even though there's a lot of kind of dialogical things. So here's your experiment. Think of something that mildly annoys you in others quite consistently. Don't let your negativity bias get carried away. I want mild annoyance, but consistent. Oh, okay, the phrase gets your goat. That gets my goat when people, whatever it is. Oh, I got one. Okay, I got one. Do you have one? I'll tell you mine. Mine is when they throw recycling in the rubbish bin. That gets my goat. And especially some people do it at my Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. And they should know better. Okay, that's mine. Mildly and consistently annoyed by such a thing. What have you got? Please share if you don't mind. Have you got something that mildly gets your goat? Mine used to be jaywalking, but I did shadow work on it. So what have we got? What mildly gets your goat when other people do it? Those other people. How dare they blank? Okay, I'm waiting to see if any responses come in. Okay, when I schedule something with a person and they invite another person, that would get my goat, right? So like if I'm hearing you right, like you're going out to tea and they're like, hey, I'm here. And so's James. Oh, well, welcome, James. Let's set another place for you. Okay, good. That's the kind of thing we want. Can somebody give me another one? What mildly gets your goat? Mildly gets your goat. What do you say, Dave? I can't hear you yet. Please unmute if you can. Still not getting yet. Okay. Oh, there you go. Hey.
All right. Tailgating really, really my God.
Yeah. Yeah, those tailgaters. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, excellent. What do we got? People who rev the engine of their car. So we got similar, the tailgaters and the car revers. Passing on a double yellow. Yikes. That's not even safe. It's not even safe. Okay. So now I want you to do what spiritual people should not do, which is to name call. Okay, and that is, so if I think of the people who throw the recycling in the rubbish bin, I think they are so, oh God, they're so lazy. Lazy fools throwing recycle because they know better. I know they know better and they're just too lazy. Okay, so what about you? When someone schedules with you, go have a tea, and then they bring their buddy, what are they? You never do this in compassionate communication, but you do it in shadow work. What are they? Are they inconsiderate? Are they, that's what they would be to me. Oh, like, it's like the emotional tone deaf. Like they're just like, they don't get it or something. Okay, rude as hell. Good. They're so rude. They're so rude. And then from Denise, we had inconsiderate. Yeah. Okay, when they pass on the double yellow, what are they? What are they? Yeah, that's a good name call. Initials AH, which I think stands for butthead or something like that. But deeper than that, right? That's a good name for them. But if I were doing that, like I would want to go like, oh, they're being dangerous, right? They're being dangerous, or like narcissistic or narcissistically dangerous or something like that. So yeah, self-importance we see here. Okay, so the last part of this is so that you think about your label on this. If you've got it, hopefully you're journaling this down or you're keeping tabs in your little internal contemplative. This is a good one to do with your journal often, early and often, like voting. Then I would take my, okay, rude, right? Rude. And if I looked at my expression of human emotions and needs, I would want to think, well, the first thing is I want to think like, how am I with rudeness? And often if it's a repressed shadow, you'll get what I get, which is like, or no, mine was lazy. Sorry, but let's say rude for the thing. You'll get this thing will immediately come up, which is like, oh no, never rude. That's not okay. You never. So like, oh, passing on the double yellow, you never put yourself first that much, right? Like that's like self-centeredness. Oh, and you can kind of play with the words until you get one that has an emotional charge, which is usually the part of yourself that you've disowned, like, oh yeah, never be self-centered. It's like these holy vows that we incorporated when we were young. So in mine, I'll do a live shadow work. Lazy non-recyclers. Okay. And then what comes up for me around laziness? Well, immediately in my mind, I note in myself, I have a problem of extreme, or not a problem, I have a pattern of extreme productivity followed by exhaustion. Extreme productivity followed by exhaustion. And it's a pattern because in the exhaustion state, I go, oh, I should really be getting something done here. Oh, what are you doing? Are you wasting your life? Don't you want to make a contribution? What? Don't be so lazy. Oh, and I just want to escape and like read a fantasy novel or something. And so by the time the energy revs back up, it goes slightly manic and slightly self-forgetting and aggressive. If I was okay with being lazy, I could probably live in a more holistic way. So the thing to think of first is, oh, well, how am I with being self-centered? And you see what comes up for yourself, right? And then where you want to pivot is, what are the jewels? If there was a healthy version of self-centeredness, how might that nourish my life? What do you think, you guys? Is there a healthy version of self-centeredness? Yeah, self-care, right? So like adequate self-care could be it. Now, that's not the pat answer. When you do this, you want to feel for like, is that it for you? Oh, shit. So, but what about self-advocacy? Like for some of us, like you say self-advocacy and the thing will go like, whoa, never do that. When you tried that with mom, it did not turn out so good to advocate for yourself. And you will have just found a disowned self. It's really cool. And then you don't have to go and find a boyfriend or girlfriend who's like very self-advocate, but covertly a narcissist or something like that. Because you have it in yourself. You can go find a boyfriend or girlfriend or non-binary friend who, isn't one of these extremes to make you feel complete. So this is the game. The common ones that come up are the 7 deadly sins, right? Are you gluttonous? Are you a slut? Are you violent? What I don't even remember what those are, but these are the ones that we classically repress. And the problem is you repress the unskillful strategies, but you also repress the skillful ways of meeting human needs. So, tiny tip of the iceberg on shadow work. I feel unsatisfied with this description, but our class time is running to an end. So I have to leave you there, hopefully hungry for more. And at the very least, what I can offer you is, if we bring in things like homecoming our emotions, practices like shadow work, where we're looking for disowned selves, we're less likely to use spiritual work to bypass the uncomfortable parts of our human development. That's one. If you have some notion like, oh, maybe I disowned my lazy bones, lazy bones McGee, like, welcome home. I actually need your skillful wisdom. Maybe I disowned my slightly slutty person on Halloween who gets to wear a kitty cat costume. Like, they have a gift to give you. Stop complaining about the other slutty kitty cats on Halloween and get yourself a nurse's outfit or whatever it is, right? If you know that that's a thing, you're less likely to use your spiritual practice as something that makes you more comfortable judging others and yourself. And you're more likely to use your spiritual practice as something that integrates you within yourself. And then, as in our meditation, that overflows and helps you actually integrate with the dynamic appearing world. That's our fire element class, man. It's about pathos, the emotional energies of life and how to foreground the presence that we created in our previous modules so that the paradox and the ambiguity are tolerable to us, even to the point where, like, if you're a vaxxer who doesn't like anti-vaxxers or vice versa, you might actually learn to be a little more tolerant in your old age. You might get to stop pigeonholing people and assuming why they're doing what they're doing because you feel so strongly about the stories that you're telling yourself. Then you could actually go about making positive change in the world with a clear mind instead of shadowboxing a world full of illusions of your own creation. There is real change that needs to be made for the sake of compassion. The sooner we stop shadowboxing and actually get into the ring, the better we're going to be able to make that change. Okay. I hope that's fun. Let's take a moment for dedication, which just means notice anything you've enjoyed about our class today. Please take a moment to savor it. Be grateful to yourself for getting to experience it. And if you like, you could imagine, as we do traditionally, that that energy of benefit somehow radiates out to others, those you love, those they love, and so on and so forth. Thank you all for being here in this free meditation class and work in progress. And I hope you enjoyed yourself. I'll stay on for a few minutes in case there are any questions after the recording or if you just want to say hi. And it's been fun.